Hello, friends of the Museum of South Texas History. This is Francisco Guajardo, the Chief Executive Officer of the museum. Today we have a special kind of program because today we're taking the Museum Platica on the road. And the reason we're taking it on the road is because we met this couple, probably in the last couple of years, and have become friends with them. A couple that lives both in Jim Hogg County and Stark County. So this is the couple of Alfredo and Dora Villarreal. They come to this Platica today with distinct family stories that have become really one story. And so the part that's especially pertinent to us here as a museum is that Dora has spent the last, maybe 25 years of her life very, very carefully curating and developing a museum of her own. Now, this is after years of thinking about it and being inspired. She has collected a number of artifacts, a number of family documents, and in the town of Guerra, Texas, population 6, Dora has actually built and curated a museum. And so in today's show, we're going to focus on the museum, we're going to focus on Dora, we're going to focus on Alfredo, and we're going to see the value of this to us historically and to us as a museum as well. So when we come back, we will engage the two of them in finding what their stories are, through a Platica. And then the last segment, we will go to the museum so that you all can, see, what the charm of it is and how we so appreciate this. So stay with us for our next Museum Platica. Welcome back to Museum Platicas, friends of the Museum of South Texas History. Francisco Guajardo with you here. I have Dora and Alfredo Villarreal with us today, and so I'm gonna put Dora on the spot here because, in a very funny way, she just said a while ago, like seconds ago, she said, "Así es como guateo con los ancestors." Dora, what did you mean by that? Así es como guateo con los ancestors, because I have a feeling that it's rich in meaning.
Well, I've always trying to find out their history and more and how they got here and the things that I have that belong to them. I want to know more about it if there's more to learn. And I feel that in the family, I was the chosen one to pick up the history and pass it on to the family. And I documented and made the family tree book and tell them with pictures and everything I could find.
Okay. So, Alfredo, I'm going to ask you this question. So, you are Dora Villarreal, Dora Perez Villarreal, you are Alfredo Villarreal. When she says, I feel that in the family I was a chosen one to be the keeper of the stories, how do you make sense of that? What is she talking about?
I think she's talking about it as a whole, the things in the museum and especially the land to stay within the family, the whole, what the ancestors, worked for very hard, and sometimes they didn't even have what to eat, and she was chosen to, I guess, keep the whole things together, the whole ranches, and as much as she can. And I think she's doing a real good job.
And so how is it that you're doing that job? Explain what it is that you have done, because in the next segment, we're actually going to be there. We're going to see the museum, but explain what this story is about, the vision for you, the actual work of it, over what period of time, and, how did this happen?
This mainly happened when I found out about, he saw the newspaper was looking for descendants that had inherited part of the land grants land and to apply for a award at the state level. So I thought that was so interesting. I said, I have that, and I'm going to trace it.
So now,
So-
when you saw this or when this happened, we're talking about how many years ago, más o menos?
20 years.
20 years ago.
Yes. So I started to prove out to the state that my families, both Garza, Perez, Treviños, Gonzalez, were the first who settled here, South Texas, more than 200 years ago, 1767, 68.
Now, Dora, your family that began to come here in the 1700s would then acquire lands, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, what's the story on that? Like, what were the names of the lands that were acquired, presumably through land grants? Is this what it is?
Yes, they acquired several porciones, the Garzas, the Perez, and they were the ones that formed the El Saus Ranch. My grandfather's picture there. He was the owner mainly of all El Saus at one time. And then the other families came in later on. And the King of Spain and viceroys came by and did the Four Winds ceremony and gave them a land grant adjacent to the river, the strips of land that were made all the way to over here.
And do you know the numbers of the grants?
Yes, Porción 104, 105, 103, 108, on the Garzas, Gonzalez, and on the Perez. It was the Porciones 70, 71, 72. And the Garzas and Perez had the sisters, their great-grandmothers were sisters. So they had property on both. I am one of the 13 great-granddaughters that inherited, and I'm still going with the ranches.
Wow.
I keep them alive, and I'm still doing what they were doing at that time was cattle business, and I'm very proud of it. I'm not going to let them down.
The name Perez comes up a lot in your family's story because you are a Perez. The museum happens to have the collection that was donated to the museum by Idolina Araceli Pérez Davis,
Mm-hmm.
que venía siendo la nieta de Casimiro
Perez.
Pérez Álvarez.
Yes.
Are you related to that family?
Yes.
How?
Araceli is my cousin. We have the same great-great-grandfather. And our grandfather was a brother to her grandfather,
To Casimiro.
to Casimiro.
So there's a story in the Casimiro collection, Araceli's collection, of Casimiro as a poet.
Mm-hmm.
He would write poetry to his girlfriend, Silvestrita.
Silvestrita.
He was trying to woo her in the 1880s, mind you, by writing poems. They were beautiful poems. Casimiro had been educated en una escuela en Saltillo, en la escuela Fuente Atena, like the Fountain of Athens. There was a school there, and Casimiro was sent off to that school. So when he came back to the ranch and was working the ranch, and this is during the time that the ranch was about to kind of give way to the agricultural industry, he then becomes a farmer. And during this time, in the 1890s, he founded a school for Mexican children in Rio Grande.
In Rio Grande, yes.
And during this time, he published 2 newspapers in 1892 and 1894.
Yes.
Do you know some of these
We
things?
used to have copies. My grandfather used to have copies of those newspapers, but since they live very close to the arroyo here, the Los Olmos, that crosses, and the water would flood their house. So they got wet, and we don't have them anymore.
Wow.
If not, I would have them framed up.
You would have.
Yes.
Well, fortunately, there's a place up in Austin at the university called the Briscoe Center for American History that has copies.
Really?
Like 1892 and 1894.
Yeah.
So what, Alfredo, what is the family story for you as far as you can trace back? De los Villarreales.
Los Villarreales, my grandfather was Antonio Villarreal Santos. And he would always write Antonio V. Santos. And I don't know where about it came that we ended up with Villarreal only. I don't know where the Santos went to. They claimed that they had some Santos families in Laredo, like Alfredo Santos, some big merchants out there. But I've heard that he came from, not from Saltillo, that other place there in Mexico. I don't know exactly what. Pero también venían de México. Y pues ahí está, en el Colorado, Rancho Colorado, he had like a convenience store. He sold jewelry, he sold everything, and the passenger bus used to stop there, on the way from, I guess, from Hebronville all the way to Rio Grande. And that's I really don't know much further back where.
On the Villarreal, we have very little.
Yeah.
And I've been looking for it, and I haven't been able to find.
Which was the family that lived in San Antonio Viejo?
Gomez, Lopez Gomez.
Lopez Gomez, and you are Lopez Gomez as well.
Right.
Well, on my grandmother's side.
Yes.
On your grandmother's side.
Side,
The
yeah,
grandma.
Los Villarreales, pues,
Right.
Yeah.
But a good amount of your research has really been on San Antonio Viejo.
San Antonio Viejo.
So begin to tell that story of the family connection to San Antonio Viejo.
Well, the family was from El Rancho Colorado, comes from the family of Antonia Gonzalez, married to Basilio Lopez, and she had 3 children. That's where Alfredo's great-great-grandmother was born. And but she becomes a widow, and she remarries and has a second family. She has Placida Ramirez, who married a Peña, and then Antonio Ramirez. And at that point, that's where we connect with the family from the King Ranch. In the family tree, the family connects to the King Ranch family of Petravela. Then she passes away, and Lino Ramirez remarries and has 10 more children. So they all lived, except the third family. I call it the third family, first, second, and third. They were all half brothers one way or another. But the first 2 families stayed and lived in San Antonio Viejo, even if their mother passed away. They were married and they stayed there. They stayed in their homes, and they had their homesteads there. However, the third family lived in Roma, in the pink house of Lino Ramirez that he bought and had there in Roma. And so they were living out there in San Antonio Viejo. The land grant was part of theirs as well as the Ramirez family, and all 3 families owned part of it, one way or another. However, the third family put a lien at the Manuel Guerra's store, and Mr. Guerra passes away, and Mrs. Cox sells it to Titi East.
So Manuel Guerra dies about 1915, and he was a big political patron of the county.
Right.
And his wife is
Virginia Cox. So she's the one who sells the property to Titi East. Tom East.
The first.
The first, senior, Tom
Senior.
Senior, for $5.45 an acre, with improvements and all. There went the homesteads of the first 2 families that were already living there. So they had to move out.
So now this happens about 1915, 1916, more or less. There's like a whole set of stories that take place on the ranches with these families, including one that you feature in the museum, where you have an invitation to the wedding of Placida Ramirez and Jose Peña.
Jose Peña.
in 1888.
Yes. And they got married there in San Antonio Viejo. And the card, the invitation, invites the family to the wedding and what have you, and the month and the year, except the date, for one reason. The priest would go on a horseback all the way over there to San Antonio Viejo to give services from over here from Roma. And it would take him 3 months to make it there. They didn't know what day he would get there. So with the date he got there, they would put a date on it, and the priest would marry them the next day. They had godfathers to go deliver the invitations, and they had a wedding. I don't know if they were living already together. I can't say that.
Pero el padre se paseaba bastante.
Oh, yes, he would go all the way to Randado.
But the priest, did he come from Roma or from Hebronville or from perhaps both places?
From Roma.
From Roma.
Yes. Yes.
So just like this story of Placida Ramirez, one would have to assume that there was a rich cultural and familial life out there in San Antonio Viejo.
Yes.
Until
Their homes were huge homes, especially this house we're here right now. It's a replica of one of those houses. I couldn't have them. I made it because I love history so much.
Okay, what you said is that in San Antonio Viejo, there was a house just like this.
Yes.
And you wish you could have that house, but the house is not.
It's
not yours.
It's not mine, and I couldn't have my grandmother's house here. Even though I pay the taxes for it, it's right behind the church, and I wanted to remodel it and have a museum there, but there was a controversy in the entrance, so I had a problem there. Too many owners, and I said, okay, I just pay the taxes just to keep it going, and I said, so I'm gonna build me one. And I asked permission from Robert when he was alive, and he took me, one of his employees took me to the houses, and we went to Rancho Ramirez and La Perla. If you see the windows here, they're as long, elongated windows like the La Perla house has it. And the Perla home, it's a 2-story home. Their homes were all 2-story homes. They were beautiful. To me, they were beautiful because they were 100 feet long and only 2 big rooms in the entire house. That's why my house has only 2 bedrooms because everything had to be huge the way they had it over there.
Now, when you say I went to Robert, you're talking about you went to Robert East.
Yes, Robert East,
and
the same man.
Who's of course featured in this book, Robert's story, and that's an interesting and even tragic story. But Robert East, you went to him, say, 20 years ago.
Yes, and he told me, why do you want to build a house like the old houses? Build you a brand new house. Yes, but it's going to be a replica of those houses.
You wanted to honor the structure.
The structure and what they had left behind. Without their permission, everything was lost in no time.
Dora, ¿de dónde viene esto? That you are like so driven by a sense of integrity about the family story. ¿De dónde viene?
Because I always heard 2 sides to the story of losing the land. That the Texas Rangers came one midnight at gunpoint and asked the people that were living there at the end. And one of them was Placida Ramirez and Maria de las Nieves and her children, which are my father-in-law and his older sister. And her other sons were also living there, and they made it into Guerra because she had married just Juan Gomez that lived across from the land grant of San Antonio. Only the fence line would divide it. So then they moved there and started building the houses of Ciares, just like the ones they had there, but not 2-story because they were in a hurry to build their homes because they were left without a home. And but it was not because the Texas Rangers and Tommy Sr. wanted them out of there, no, because it had been sold to TTEs.
By Miss Cox.
by Miss Cox. They did not steal the property. Nobody stole no property. Yes, there were times that there proves that people did steal land from his Mexican Americans, but in this case, they did not steal. There are the records in the courthouse of the sales, and also banks that they had loans in Laredo at 14% that they couldn't pay, and taxes they couldn't pay. So they lost everything, San Antonio Viejo, 17,000 acres. So that's when El Rancho Colorado was born, which is later had to be changed their name because of the post office. There were no zip codes, and the mail was going to a Colorado state.
To the state of Colorado.
Yes, so they wanted to get a name that was no post office name after. So they said, okay, let's put the land grantee. They started. Lopez. No, there was already a Lopez somewhere. Okay, Gomez. No. Okay, Guerra. Okay, there was a grantee that is in the land grant of last name Guerra, Francisco Peña Guerra. And so that one hit the right button. So they named it Guerra for that reason, not because of the Guerra family in
Stark County,
here
in Roma.
No, San Roman. San Roman down the road, and or the families in Guerra. No, because of a land grantee, Francisco Peña Guerra.
When did you meet? How old were you when you met?
You don't want to know that.
I'm going to guess. Let me guess.
I was 18 years old and he was 19. I was a junior at the end of the junior year, and then the whole senior year we went, we dated each other.
But you were from Roma, or here in South.
Yes.
Going to school in Roma. And
going to Roma. He was going to school in Hebronville.
In Hebronville. And so Roma and Hebronville are how far away?
But
40-some miles.
40-some miles.
Maybe 70, so.
70?
It could be 70. But El South y Guerra are more like not even 20 miles away.
Let me tell you how it also.
Oh, you're going to tell the story?
Got started.
Okay.
She was looking for a Chamberlain for some deal in the church there in Roma. She was representing the church here in the South. And so they approached me with that if I wanted to.
Who is they?
His cousins.
Yeah, she talked to my cousins and they got me involved.
Yeah. But you did not know him.
No. And I kept telling his cousin, he better be cute.
Yeah, so we went to
He better be cute, you said.
Yes.
Okay.
So we went to
This
that.
is getting good now. Go ahead.
So we went to that event in the church and everything. And so de ahí comenzó.
She started to come visit me because my mother would not, but she was very strict with me.
Your mother was.
Yes, because she was a single parent, and she was my father and my mother to me. So she didn't let me go out with him. So Alfredo would come visit me at the house. Those were our dates, and she would sit right next to us.
I borrowed a car from whoever would lend me one to come to visit you.
And what was the road like, that road that goes from Guerra to El South?
They wide.
The same.
Oh, but it was not a dirt road?
No.
No, 640. It's the same highway.
Okay. And so you were still in high school, and you were still in high school?
Yes.
So then what happened come like late?
Well, graduated and got married.
But first you went to the prom together, I'm guessing.
Yeah.
Yes, we went to the proms.
Both proms?
Both.
Then
Over here and over there.
Same
in
year?
Hebron. Same year.
Did you wear the same clothes?
No. I did.
Los enoje. I'm
No.
just No, but he may have. Did you wear the same suit?
Everything.
Really? Yes?
I don't remember that.
He remembers.
You're so crazy.
Hello.
But she wore different dresses.
Yes.
Yes.
You had to
Yes.
show up. in
Because
every-
they had a team for every prom in every school. So they have the team for the year. So and his was a Roman theme.
Oh.
And I remember I wore a dress with like a Roman dress.
And did he wear like a toga thing or no?
No.
¿Se puso traje?
Yes.
El
Oye.
mismo traje que...
que llevó a Roma.
Ya dejen el prom.
Okay, ya vamos a dejar el but this is, I think, the beginning of a really good story.
Nos
Because this
Nos
you're
casamos,
looking-
we went to Brownsville. We attended Texas Alamos College for a year. Then we transferred to Pan Am, and we were going to Pan Am. And then my father got sick, and we would come to the ranch during the week. We check on the cows and water and everything, and doing it for quite a while, you get tired. This always, I asked her, we either go to the ranch or forget about it, the ranch. I think she didn't take long. She said, no, vámonos para el rancho. So nos vinimos y aquí estamos. Y then she went back to college in
Kingsville.
Kingsville, Texas A&M. When the A&I was made to A&M, she graduated from
The
A&M.
first class of A&M.
First class
Kingsville.
of A&M. And I dropped out when I was going to be a junior.
How old were you when you graduated from A&M Kingsville?
Oh, I don't remember. I was,
She
but
had-
I didn't go back until
Yeah.
our aunts, my mother and his father, everybody
Right.
passed away, and we were by ourselves there in Guerra. He said, "You want to go back to college?"
Mm.
I said, "Well, that was my mother's dream, and I want to fulfill her dream."
Wow.
So because I was the only one from the family that had not graduated from college, so I went Tuesdays and Thursdays. But instead of being 1 year that I needed, I had to make 2 years in
Good.
1 year.
You probably lost some credits and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Now,
Yes.
you said that you were the only one in your family who had not graduated from college?
Yes.
So how many were there? How many kids?
My sister, my brothers, and except my brother Kiko, he didn't go to college. He stayed also at the ranch.
Okay.
It was him and me that were doing the ranching business, but he passed away 7 years ago.
Mm. Wow.
Francisco.
Mi tocayo.
Yes.
Wow. What was it about your mother? What was it about your mother that because you said that my mother wanted me.
Yes,
Yeah.
because she always said that she didn't like to see me working so hard in the ranch. And because there's good times and bad times, and we have droughts, and we lose some years, and some years we make profit. And she said, "I want to see you behind a desk inside an air-conditioned room." When I got my degree and graduated, and I just hung it on the wall. I had students from the University of Texas to come over and get their masters and their doctors on their thesis and whatever papers they need to write, and I help them out with them in resources out in the ranches. And I get appointments for them on the ranches so that they can go and visit and do research. The last one I had, she was doing the research on peyotes.
Wow.
And she did graduate. She dropped out, and then she came back.
Did she learn a lot
Yes,
from the peyote?
yes,
I'm guessing she did.
yes. And
Dormía
they would run tests from one ranch to another ranch, and the cells of the peyotes, and some were bigger and some were smaller, whatever. And she dropped out and she didn't finish, and then she came back, and she said, "I want to finish just the way you did." And she did. She graduated. She got her doctor's degree. I was so proud of her.
You told me earlier a story about your mother, and I'm trying to remember the story about how your mother was one of the first sources of inspiration to help you think in terms of collecting or keeping things.
Yes, she was always talking about what her mothers and her ancestors went through to make it here to Texas. Well, it was Mexico at one time, but when they came in there, it was Mexico, and they went through revolutions and things and made it all the way over here. And especially my father's family, my grandmother on the Trevino side, they were well off when they left Spain. And they lived in Roma for a while, and then they came to live over here in one of the ranches that I have. And I'm still running. That was her ranch. And
In El South?
yes, just down the road I have her ranch there. And the ruins of the old houses are still there, little stones and little things that I couldn't save because there was no house. It was already down.
So stones from
From the building she built.
from the early 1800s,
Yeah,
maybe mid
1700s.
Okay.
And
Ciudades.
So talk a little bit, Alfredo, about ciudades. Like what is it? How is it harvested? Right. I mean, these are like pits that are dug.
Right.
Talk about this for a second, because a lot of the architecture here is really based on the ciudad.
Yeah. Well, let me just say first that this house, what we did to make it look like it's made out of ciudad, the walls are 24 inches thick. We built it with just those regular blocks because the ciudades are, most of them are 12 inches by maybe 18 inches, or they're different sizes. They would look for a place where there's a lot of caliche, and they would kind of cut them with a
chisel.
They work with it and cut them one at a time, and then I guess they haul them with the mules or something where they were going to build a house. But actually, they're made out of caliche. In some places, you might find some, like along the river, that are made out of limestone. Those ones, I guess, were very hard to work with. It's real hard rock. Pero ciudades, we still have quite a bit of ciudades around, laying there in the old houses. Pero we built this house. It was her idea. We have an 8-inch wall, and then we have an 8-inch gap, and then another 8-inch wall to make it look like 24 inches was what a ciudad is, with the size of a ciudad.
This is very sturdy than this house.
Yes, and when we went over to the East family ranch, I call it TT East because that was the name of the ranch. Now the East Foundation changed it to the entire ranch as San Antonio Viejo. No, there's a place there only for San Antonio Viejo Ranch. They call it El Viejo, but I still keep the old names. I don't like people to change names on the ranches because the ancestor gave it, respect what they gave us, and keep it up.
Yeah, well, we used to go in there in school bus and pick up, 10, 15 kids. And we always, para Rancho Nuevo, y el Rancho Nuevo, y Rancho Nuevo. Then they supposedly be San Antonio Viejo. And I asked one of the board members of the foundation, look, it took me 15 years to graduate, and we used to come in the school bus at Rancho Nuevo. Where's San Antonio Viejo from here? So we we're about 1.5 miles southwest from here. That's where San Antonio Viejo is. Rancho Viejo, because they call it Rancho Viejo. Yeah, well, because to us it's Rancho Nuevo, and to them it's
and TT's had a board there at the entrance on a post, regular post, mesquite post, and it was nailed to it, and it said TT East Ranch, Thomas East Ranch.
I think Mike has that.
Before we begin to wrap up here, if you would tell me who your parents were, names of your parents, and what years they would have been born.
Oh, I had 2 sets of parents. My paternal parents, there were 2 sisters married with 2 brothers. When I was born, my mother had a hard time with her labor, so she stayed in the hospital. And the one that got me out of the hospital, I was a premature baby, was her sister. And she kept me, Gregoria Garza Perez and Alejandro Perez, brother to my dad, and she was sister to my mom, Teresa G. Perez and Domingo Perez. So when she came home, she said, okay, you can bring the baby over. So she took me to her, and I didn't drink the bottle at all with her. All I did was cried and never. So my aunt that was taking care of me,
Gregoria.
Gregoria, had to go and bottle feed me even at midnight because I would not drink the bottle. Till finally she got fed up with me, my paternal mother, Teresa, and said, okay, Gregoria, here, take her. So they took me in as their only daughter.
Gregoria raised you.
Yes, and Alejandro. But she lost Alejandro when I was 4 years old, but we kept on going together.
Wow. How about your parents? Names of your parents?
Alfredo Villarreal, I'm a junior, and well, he's there from the Rancho El Colorado. He was born there, and he worked with Humble in the Humble camp, but now it's Exxon. For many years, he retired and worked around the ranch and the cattle and this and that, and then my mother was Delia Flores Villarreal from, actually, those years they call it Revilla. Now it's Guerrero Viejo and Guerrero Nuevo, but actually Guerrero Viejo was Revilla. And that's where she comes from, Villarreal. Pedro Flores, I understand there's still a monument, a marker where he's buried there in Guerrero Viejo. I've never been there. I'm afraid.
To cross.
Yeah.
There is, Dora, a manuscript, a book that you've been writing, that you've kind of taken a break from for the last few years. But you told me earlier that this book that you began some time ago, you've written maybe as much as 200 pages of it.
Yes, I had put together.
What is the content in that book?
Mainly is all the proof of how the family in Guerra, the Gomez family, the Lopez Gomez family, the Ramirez family, the Ramirez Peña family lost San Antonio Viejo. Because I heard two sides of the story. They stole it, and when I looked for it on the courthouse, and then documents that his grandaunt's had, sisters to my father-in-law, that she could have got out when they got out from San Antonio Viejo, proves that it was not stolen. And so that's what I'm trying to put out, the true story of that, of both families, because the East families were very close to the Villarreal families. Even when I got married, they made a trip to come meet me. And from there on, I became friends of Mrs. East. I called her La Madama because that's what everybody would call her, La Madama. And her daughter, Lika, and Robert, and Tom Jr.
La Madama is the one who's called Big Mama in the book.
Yeah,
Yes.
I think so.
Yes.
Yes.
And
And that word came from Spain.
Yes.
It's a respected lady of the Casa Grande.
Doña.
Yes.
So how about if we take a little trip out to the museum with our guests?
Sure.
Okay.
Enjoy
so
it.
When we come back, we're going to do a mini tour of the museum, and I think that you will, through that tour, listen to the voices of Dora and Alfredo as well, to help us to add more texture, more depth, more substance to these stories that Alfredo and Dora have shared. So stay with us and join us at the museum. Welcome back to Museum Platicas. We are in Jim Hogg County. As we drove in this morning, I was pointing out to you, Tony, that we passed right by a ranch que se llama Dos Condados Ranch. Because Dos Condados Ranch actually straddles Stark County
And Jim Hall.
and Jim Hog County. And so I thought that's a really good, appropriate name for. I mean, I don't know how catchy it is, but Dos Condados. I thought, wow, that's pretty cool. So Francisco Guajardo, once again with you, friends of the museum, and so we are today in the small town of Guerra, Texas. And so, according to the authorities on Guerra, Texas, and the authorities are to my right and to my left, the authorities tell me that 6 people live in Guerra, Texas today. One of the features of this museum, Dora, is that this was the post office for Guerra, Texas. This year, Alfredo, tell us the story here. And so, Dora, you have kind of curated here so that the post office becomes a centerpiece of this museum. So, Alfredo, you used to be the postmaster here, or the post office guy.
Right. 4 hours a day. Like part-time job.
Yeah. And so tell us about this here. What
Well,
would have happened here on a daily basis?
we didn't have a lot of customers. I knew who came at certain hour. Everybody came at the same time every day. And on Fridays, we had the route came through Hebbronville, and then from Hebbronville this way. But on Fridays, we had a mail route from Lo Peño, came here and picked up the mail along Highway 2687. And the mail carrier had to stay here for about an hour to see if anybody dropped by with some letter that he was going to have to take. And from there, we would just wait to see who.
It was an exchange of mailbags.
Yeah.
So when you were the post office person here, how many people lived in Guerra?
Oh, not.
20.
Yeah, because the surrounding ranches also
Right.
came here.
Yeah, like Lo Peño, for example.
Well, not La Peña, but from here, on the Javelina Road, there were some Higgins in there, and Ramos, and other, I don't remember who else, but
Everybody was alive at the time.
Everybody.
All his uncles, and they all received their mail here.
I'm looking at this ledger here. This is a register of money orders issued at the post office at Guerra, and this is from the 1920s. Who would have worked this? Because I mean, you're a late 20th century guy.
Gumersindo
Gumersindo who?
Gomez.
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 And then there, after Gomesindo, there was Federico Cuellar.
Yes.
But work in the post office?
Yes.
But not here.
No.
No.
There would have been another post office.
Yeah.
Because this post office was established here when?
About, I would say about 20 years ago.
Okay, now you worked it 20 years ago, no?
Yeah.
And before that, your uncle worked it
Mm-hmm.
for how many years?
And maybe another 20 years.
And your uncle was a World War II veteran,
Yeah, Juventino.
Juventino.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
ran into the letters
And
where they
you-
check his uncle's
Mhm.
accreditation to see if he would qualify to run the post office
Wow.
and by the government.
Mm-hmm.
And I was going through the old papers so that I could hand them to you with the story with the
Okay.
mailbox. And it has the date when he came in as a postmaster. Then his sister at the end had to take over a while, 1 year. Then it was hanged down to Alfredo because he was going blind.
Wow.
So she had to write the work for him,
Okay.
but he was there.
So this goes back very likely to the 60s, maybe even before.
Oh yes,
Yes.
Yeah.
When the family was involved
yes,
in the mail
yes.
industry, essentially.
Right.
Okay, so show me some of these things that you have here, Dora. Like, what is the story on this here? Oh, by the way, so Tony, if you can get the post office here and see kind of the charm of this, so that the desk where people would have, come in and maybe given Alfredo a piece of mail, y de ahí la recogían. So you got the names on this side. So there's Hernandez and Guerrero, and Ramos and Peña and Higgins and Kidner, La Leona. La Leona Ranch. Okay, okay. So that's interesting. Yeah. Not the person. Yeah, no, not the person. And so what you have here is artifacts of El Rancho.
Yes,
And-
this here are things that belong to Alfredo's grandfather, Antonio Villarreal Santos. And he used to have like a little mercantile because it had even a jewelry store. And
Really?
and that's the what he used to weigh the flour, the sugar, because it would not come in sacks. They had to sack them in little sacks or whatever, and weigh it.
So this is Buffalo brand scale. It's a
Scale,
scale that
yes.
was a Buffalo brand. And then we see here a crib.
Yes,
And so that
was the first crib from the oldest daughter of Matilde Gomez Villarreal, Alfredo's grandmother, had her first child, and that was the cradle they used for the rest of the family until even our kids, we used it with our own kids.
Really? How did you secure this?
They had it at Alfredo's grandmother's house all the time, and then when I got our daughter, we used it.
Okay.
Then his cousin that he has in Laredo, I passed it on to him. Take it and lay your kids in there because the family grew up in that cradle.
This desk here. This desk is from the school that was across the street.
Yes, but this desk came first from San Antonio Viejo, had a school of its own, because the family from here from Guerra used to live and were owners of part of San Antonio Viejo. And they lived over there and they had their school, their church, and their stores and what have you. And their kids would use these desks. And there were only a few of these desks.
That photograph, is that a photograph of the...
That's the Casa Verde in San Antonio Viejo.
Uh-huh.
And on the top part of you see the little windows?
Yes.
That used to be where they had school for Casa Verde.
This is where they had the school, and this is San Antonio Viejo.
That's part of San Antonio Viejo.
Part of San Antonio, which is where the
Yes.
East Ranch
Correct.
is today.
Correct.
Okay.
So when they closed the schools down over there, they brought the what little furniture they had. And I have the original teacher's desk in my house over there in my little office. And it's just a little table.
Mm.
And Alfredo's uncle, the one that used to be the postmaster before Alfredo Juventino, he used to be the bus driver and go get the kids into San Antonio Viejo in a little truck he had. And he would cross through the property here, cross the fence, and bring them over, and they would have come to school. Then he would take them in the afternoon.
This desk here.
No, this, a lady threw it away, and I asked her if I could have it.
Uh-huh.
Because it's a different desk. Now this is what the schoolhouse from here from Guerra.
This is the schoolhouse that was right across the
Yes.
street. And so that schoolhouse was close to the old Catholic church.
This was the
They
church.
used it both ways, man.
They used it both
Oh,
religion and school.
so that was for church and for school.
Correct.
And did they call it the Guadalupe school or Guadalupe
No,
church?
it was just a school, Hebreville school.
You pointed out, I'm going to grab this here, Dora, if you don't mind.
Sure.
You pointed out this wedding invitation that reads, José Peña y Plácida Ramírez de Peña tienen el honor de ofrecerse a usted y familia en su nueva enlace. San Antonio Viejo, Starr County, Texas, agosto de 1888.
Yes, no date.
No date. And so the reason there's no date is because
The priest would come by horse every 3 months or 4 months. They didn't know when, so they had a godfather to. They fill in the date when the priest was there, and a godfather would go deliver the invitations, and they had a wedding the next day.
then you write in the date.
And they would write in the date. The day they got married, they would write in the date.
but it's kind of like missing a flight today.
Very much so.
But this is so interesting. This is a wedding invitation,
Correct.
and
That's
so
a copy of the original.
It's
the,
a copy of the original.
one is a tiny little card.
you
but
blew it up a
I
little
blew
bit.
it up so that we
Yeah.
can read them.
So another thing to point out here is that San Antonio Viejo today is in Jim Hogg County, isn't it?
Correct. It's no
San
longer
Antonio Viejo here was in Starr County
right.
because Starr County was not created till
Jim Hall was
Jim
like-
I'm sorry, Jim Hogg was created in
1913.
1913. So today it is in Jim Hogg, not Starr
Yes, and this wedding took place in the old church in San Antonio Viejo, which is now the East Foundation.
County. That's where the East Foundation is today. Okay. Wow. All right, so let's go around here and point out some things that you feel, Dora, are really, really important. Because like you went through this great effort to secure this or that sort of thing. What are some of the items that you want to point out?
So what you see that table over there? It's just a table, but you turn it upside down, and they're from all the boxes. They would embark things on the train, and they would go pick them up, and then they would turn them into furniture.
Wow.
That's how they got wood over here, lumber, and this came through the Spiegel catalog and probably it was in the boxes that they made that table. Heaven knows, because it came in a wooden box and it belonged to my father-in-law. It came in by train to Hebronville.
Wow. And so the date on this is probably, what do you think, Alfredo? The date on
In 1910.
1910 or so?
Yeah.
Wow. So there's a story about this table here. So what's the story on this table that's very
table-
rustic, very ranch-like?
This table is part of the half of the doors that used to be like French doors. You open the top part because the bottom part would stay closed. That way the coyotes would not get inside the house, but they would get fresh air. So this is the top part of one of the doors from the old houses here, and Alfredo converted it into a table for me, which I adore. But you see the hinges right here? They were made by a welder. They were not the modern hinges we have nowadays.
Well,
So now, your efforts here, Dora, have been recognized by different entities. Excuse me here, Tony. But the Texas Co-op Power magazine
Yes.
featured you on the cover.
Yes.
Ranchos Viejos Preserving a Family Heritage. That's you on a Jeep.
Yes.
This
Yes.
is from how many years ago? This is 20 years ago,
Oh,
Yeah.
in the year 2004.
she could get on the Jeep back then, not today.
And then also out here, another magazine publication, the summer 2017.
Put out by Tractor Supply. Yes, they picked up the story from the co-op, and the co-op, the state, they called the state office at the Austin to see who was a rancher that had been in quite a while in South Texas.
Mm-hmm.
And I had just gotten the 200-year award for the land heritage.
Wow.
And still doing the same thing, cattle business, and I'm still at it till
You're
I
still
can.
at it. So tell me the story of the dress.
The dress belonged to San Juana Villarreal, a sister of Alfredo's grandfather, Antonio Villarreal, and they made her dress to go to the 100-year anniversary of Guerrero Viejo, and she wore that dress, and it was in display in Austin for a whole year at the LBJ Library Museum in 97 and to 98.
So that has been seen by many, many people.
Yes, and there's the announcement of that Los Tejanos making huellas in Texas. And those also are the brands of his great-great-great-grandmother.
So the brands here, it says Maria de la Nieves Lopez, 1857 and 1932. And these are hand-forged cattle brands and goat brands.
Right.
And these are, of course, in you're the owner of this. What are some of the other stories to be told here?
Yes. That section right here is
Yes.
the agricultural section.
The agricultural section, okay.
And I'm very proud of it because we're a part of it.
Mhm.
And Alfredo's, the uncle, Juventino, he was one of the first members of the Association of the Agriculture there in Hebronville,
The soil conservation.
Soil Conservation. And this is the first year they gave an award to them. And this is the original award that was given to them. And there's a letter of recognizing them as the members of that organization. Still today, we work real close with the agriculture department to keep the history of the land and still have cattle and use it for hunting, and we follow the rules of the agriculture.
Okay, okay, good. What about some of these artifacts that you have here?
This right here, these are the pocket watches that Alfredo's granduncle would always use. This is Jose Maria Gomez. And this one right here that has the minute, that was a gift from T.T. East to him because they were very close friends. And they used to race horses.
Which East?
T.T. East, Tom East,
Tom East,
Senior,
Senior,
Mike's grandfather.
the one who first purchased the ranch
Correct,
in about 1913 or so.
correct.
Okay. How about this El Bordón, the king?
Belonged also to Jose Maria
Jose Maria,
Gomez
yeah.
because, as you can see, here's the pistol. The pistol belonged to him, and that was in a gunfight, and he ended up crippled after the gunfight because he got shot. He went to claim $20 that they owed to them for some cattle that they had sold to somebody in Salineño. And a friend of him brought him this game from the San Antonio auction in downtown, which is right now in San Antonio. So
You-
he used it to walk.
You have a beam up there with what appear to be brands and other kinds of symbols. Can you describe how you place it up there and what it represents?
Those are the brands of the ranchers here from around here in El Colorado Ranch that neighbor us, and they're all cousins, grandkids of Maria Las Nieves and Juan Gomez.
You have a photograph of the old Guerra post office here.
Yes,
Who is this person here?
that's San Juana. That's the oldest daughter of Matilde Gomez Guerrero.
And where was this physically, this building?
Back in the ranch here.
We
Back
just
in
go
the-
into the ranch here, and the house is still there.
Okay.
And
What-
you see Juventino, and that's their mother, my father-in-law, and Erasmo. She had 3 boys and 3 girls.
World War II veteran?
Yes,
World War II veteran?
yes,
World War II veteran?
yes.
All of them went at the same time. They got the boat at the same time and left their sisters to take care of the ranch. They went out there and burned pear and everything.
Wow,
Y se los llevaron a los tres.
a los tres.
Together.
Y los tres regresaron.
Sí.
And Erasmo went. He
He
was.
in the medic.
He was in paramedics in D-Day.
Wow.
He was there.
Yeah, we just celebrated the
I know.
anniversary just a couple
He would
days
never
ago.
talk about it.
He
It
never
was
liked
something
it.
very hard for him.
Well, they saw a lot of
Yes,
death, a lot
and
of
his
trauma.
son Erasmo, the only one that's alive right now, first cousin to Alfredo. They went to visit where he went during the war, and he wanted to take us together with him, but we couldn't go because Alfredo can't fly too long of a time in a plane.
That's a long flight over an
Yeah.
ocean. So, Dora, how would you summarize the effort of you and Alfredo and others, but you leading this effort in the last generation here of doing this? How would you summarize it?
Oh, well, this used to first be a little convenience store, and then they put in the post office, and the convenience store was closed. And I said, you know what? It's going to be a post office museum. Guerra Post Office Museum.
How about that?
So that's what we called it there. And the state came to give it the approval of it, and they did approve it. and they give you the rules that you color it this. They give you the choices, and then they tell you you have. I cannot keep my objects in the same place for 2 years. I have to move them around.
This is the Texas Historical Commission telling you this?
Yes.
Well, Dora, this has been such important work. And so
I love it.
on behalf of the entire South Texas region, and especially those who care about historic preservation,
Yes.
thank you for preserving and presenting in the respectful and sensitive and thoughtful way that you have.
Thank you.
Welcome back to Museum Platicas, friends. I have to say that it's been a thoroughly exciting experience to hang out with Dora Villarreal and with Alfredo Villarreal. It is the second visit that we make to their home, to their two homes, because they have a home in Jim Hogg County, in Guerra, and they have a home here in El Saus, in Starr County. And I've learned a lot. I think that the museum has learned a lot. But I think the greatest thing that will stay with me is the commitment of Dora. The commitment of Dora to understand the family, to preserve the family story, and to present it in the best way that she can. And so, Dora and Alfredo, is there anything that we've left out from this plática that we've had, and also from the visit to the museum?
No, I can't think of anything.
We had an exhibit at the LBJ Library, and that was very exciting because his grandaunts were still living, and Lupita Barrera Bryan and Bob Parber came over and took the pictures of them because they couldn't make it. And they borrowed some stuff, some address and brands and other things from the family to display it over there. And when we were invited to the grand opening, Mrs. LBJ was still, Miss Lady Bird was still alive. And they made an grand opening, and they did a very pretty invitation, and we got invited. And only the people that had exhibits there. We went to there, and to our surprise, when we walked in, the first picture they had was his grandaunts. And they were all three of them were there. Their picture, they couldn't go with us, but they were still there.
How about that?
Yeah, I thought that was so nice of Lupita and Bob to do that. And I still get in touch with Lupita and Bob.
Did Lady Bird have a conversation with you?
Yes, I sat with her at the table.
What do you
for
remember
supper.
of what she said?
Oh, she was very excited that all the people that had exhibits were able to attend there, and everybody would come and congratulate her. And I have pictures where I'm sitting there with her.
Okay. Dora and Alfredo, thank you very much for your time, your generosity, your life's work. Really, I mean, your work has integrity.
Thank you.
Museum open by appointments only.
Okay. That's a museum in Guerra, Texas, open by appointment only. So if you want help in getting there, by all means, feel free to contact the Museum of South Texas History, and we can help facilitate that conversation. So with that, we say goodbye, and this is the Museum Platica of June of the year 2024. And so stay with us for future programming, and thank you very much for supporting the work of the Museum of South Texas History and the museum in Guerra, Texas.
Thank
All
you.
right. So long, everybody.